You say you broke into our system just to play a game, right?
Right, that's right. That's exactly right.
A teenager who just wants to play some video games almost starts World War III, though this time it's actual World War III and not what happens when your roommate's buddy eats your leftover pizza.
Shall we play a game?
WarGames.
Let's play Global Thermonuclear War.
WarGames is a 1983 thriller from director John Badham, where a high school kid gets control of some serious computing hardware. Not only will it run crisis, but it will cause one.
What does Whopper recommend, Mr. McKittrick?
Full-scale retaliatory strike.
David Lightman is a high school student in Washington State who's highly intelligent but also incredibly lazy. He's not worried about failing biology since he can just log onto the school's computer and change his grade. He tries to impress fellow student Jennifer Mack by offering to change her failing grade so she can avoid summer school. She declines the offer, but he changes her grade anyway. Aw, that's so sweet. She was probably just expecting a mixtape. David's parents work all the time, so he amuses himself with computers and playing video games, whether it be at the local arcade or at home where his bedroom has more obsolete computing hardware than Sears.
Oh, hey, you got it back.
Gotta make a note of that one. Might come in handy someday.
He learns of some unreleased new games, and rather than wait for them to be released, he uses a ton of tricks to log into the company's computer and then spends what seems like a lot of time researching the creator of the system, the late Dr. Falcon, in order to work out his password. My own password is really hard to crack, unless you know that it's password spelled backwards. I don't think that has any relevance on the number of times I've had to get a new credit card, or a new passport, or a new driver's license, or a new house, or a new cat. Perhaps thinking about it, maybe I need to stop answering unknown callers with, "Hello, my password is password spelled backwards." Anyway, I solved this using a password manager. His name is Tom and he charges $20 an hour.
Okay.
The military have found that a large number of personnel will refuse orders to launch their nuclear missiles.
Screw the procedure. I want somebody on the goddamn phone before I kill 20 million people.
Dr. McKittrick at NORAD convinces the government that they can just fire the missiles directly by using a supercomputer that to date its main function has been playing war games. The War Operation Planned Response Computer, usually known as Whopper, back when you couldn't actually get one with cheese in the NORAD canteen, is a supercomputer that runs simulations over and over, and that same computer will now be a direct link between NORAD and the launch controls for the nuclear arsenal. It would be an awful shame if the computer intelligence couldn't tell the difference between a simulation and the real thing.
It looks as though that's a great idea. You got this.
Now, it just so happens that the computer that David is connected to, thinking it's a video game company, is actually Whopper in NORAD.
If I could just get that damn password, I could play the computer.
David's stalker-level research into Dr. Falcon has learned that he died a long time ago, and his wife and child died even earlier. Falcon's password is his late son's name, Joshua.
He wasn't very old.
Oh, he was pretty old. He was 41.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that's old.
David, possibly the first person in a movie to use hacking skills to try and show off to a girl, looks through the various games and decides to play what he thinks is just a harmless simulation.
Let's play Global Thermonuclear War.
Sounds like a plan. You got this.
Back at NORAD, alarms start ringing when everybody thinks they're under nuclear attack. An attack that stops very suddenly when David turns his computer off to go outside to clean up a trash bin that's been knocked over. However, the sim is still running, and things take a turn where Joshua starts contacting David, who he thinks is Falcon, which computers generally shouldn't be calling people. We are now so used to simple systems trying to sell us stuff based on things like purchase history, or even how long we take to look at something. Oh, so you looked at a video for 2 seconds where a dog went surfing. Well, how about we serve you ads for surfboards, animal shelters, and an emergency animal hospital near the seaside? However, if you rage quit from Madden and NFL, your PlayStation doesn't call you up wanting to know why you were lagging so badly there, champ. It's possibly worth pointing out that as far as everyone at NORAD's concerned, the computer's called Whopper, but to David, it will always be Joshua.
Primary goal has not yet been achieved.
After buying a charmingly small Big Gulp, the FBI arrests David and transports him to NORAD for interrogation. But it's an interrogation where nobody ever bothers to listen to David's answers, where everybody assumes he must be part of a spy ring. This super spy is left unhandcuffed in an office where he uses a computer terminal to again contact Joshua. David manages to escape NORAD and contacts Jennifer about buying him a ticket to visit Dr. Falcon, who, as it turns out, Is not Falcon dead after all, but living in Oregon? Joshua is still playing the simulation, and when NORAD reaches DEFCON 1, it will launch the missiles starting World War III without Joshua thinking it was any different than just playing a standard theoretical war game.
That computer is trying to win the game that we asked it to play.
It looks like you want to start World War III. Sounds like a great idea. I can help you with that.
Playing a video game against an opponent, whether it be a live opponent or a computer opponent, can be fraught, especially if your opponent gets way too into it. I once lugged a PC to a LAN party, and there was this one guy who was just popping off at me the whole time, screaming at me to go jump into a live volcano, or to eat razor blades, or to drink bleach. And then he asks if we can catch up after the game and go grab a burger, and then straight back into casting aspersions on my choice of graphics card.
What's the difference?
Oh, wow.
When David lands in Oregon, Jennifer surprises him. Together, they find the dinosaur-obsessed Dr. Falcon, who, as it turns out, is not dead, but not all that worried about being actually dead. He's quite okay with the world ending, since nature will just start again. For a change, it's not the teenagers who are nihilistic.
You're kidding.
Falcon, of course, does have a change of heart, and they'll all head to NORAD. It takes a couple of attempts to actually stop Joshua from launching. The only way they manage to convince it is to distract it with another game. A game of tic-tac-toe, or for weirdos, X's and O's, or for normal people, noughts and crosses.
Because it's a boring game. It's always a tie.
The film's idea is that tic-tac-toe always ends in a draw, but that's because they've never played against an idiot like my cousin Ted. Oh God, he's such a dork. He always starts in the top corner, that idiot.
Put X in the center square.
Meanwhile, my secret strategy for winning at tic-tac-toe is to confuse the hell out of the other player. If the other player starts as a cross, then I also play as a cross. Joshua can't beat tic-tac-toe and realizes global thermonuclear war, funnily enough, has no winners. So how about a game of chess?
The only winning move is not to play.
Now, that's a nice offer, but I can't help thinking that if you play Joshua at chess, there still might be some geopolitical ramifications, like giving up Belgium to the Warsaw Pact.
No, what does that mean?
World War III.
WarGames is a film that's sort of lighthearted, but not really, since a teenager almost starting World War III is kind of a heavy subject.
General, DBS is tracking 300 inbound Soviet ICBMs.
1980s movies where actors in their 20s playing teenagers having adventures were so common that you really have to stretch to find an adventure starring anybody over the age of 30. Fortunately, in the 1980s, we had ways of overcompensating. We had the casts of Star Trek and the James Bond movies.
What's that mean?
I don't know, but it's great.
In WarGames, the teen protagonists David and Jennifer aren't wisecracking smartasses or wise-ass crack-smarters or even smart wise-ass cracks.
Maybe you could tell us who first suggested the idea of reproduction without sex.
Your wife?
This isn't a John Hughes film, and for once that's not necessarily a knock on WarGames. It's an enjoyable film that's quite human, without descending into the typical 80s teen sex comedy. You know, the ones where the horny teen geeks try to peek into the girl's locker room, but then they get their penises stuck when the window slams shut. And then at the drive-in, they almost score, but get their penises caught when the lid of the trunk slams shut. And then at the dance, they manage to get dates with cheerleaders, but they're only doing it for a prank, and the geeks get their penises stuck in the fire doors. And then, once all the swelling has gone down, the geeks have to beat the jocks at some sporting event that hasn't been done previously, otherwise the local pizza parlor will have to be closed down and turned into a clinic specializing in erectile dysfunction. Look, I freely admit that I might still be a little bit miffed that my spec script for Getting an Ice Pack was sent back unread by John Hughes' cousin, Ron Hughes.
Get off my case, motherfucker!
In WarGames, well, no one's needing an ice pack. There's a sweet romance blossoming between Jennifer and David, where no one's getting anything caught in any entry portal. Both the teens were played by actors in their very early 20s who looked just enough like 17-year-olds. Matthew Broderick had done a lot of stage work, but only a little work on film and television. WarGames was his second feature and his first as star, though he'd almost never be off our screens, where he would go from playing iconic characters like Ferris Bueller, Simba, Inspector Gadget, Leo Bloom, and much more. Broderick plays David like a 14-year-old kid, somebody who's just slightly awkward, but not so nerdy, though he does actually hang around with actual nerds, possibly because they'll make him seem not so weird. Ali Sheedy had done more work on television, but WarGames was likewise her second feature. Jennifer as a character has two motivations. She likes David, she likes exercising. That's it.
We'll both act normal and everything is going to be fine.
The rest of the cast were filled with character actors like Dabney Coleman as McKittrick, John Wood as Falcon, and Barry Corbin as the tobacco-chewing General Beringer. In this film aimed at teens, The adults are almost all buffoons. Not clowns, but definitely not as in control as they would like to think they are. So much of the film's plot gets out of control because none of them will actually listen to David.
David, machines don't call people.
Yours did.
Also in small roles are John Spencer and Michael Madsen. The original idea for WarGames was based on somebody like Professor Stephen Hawking, who had the intelligence to unlock the mysteries of the universe, but the answer might end up trapped in his body by the degenerative effects of ALS. Writers Walter F. Parks and Lawrence Lasker wrote a script called The Genius about a dying scientist looking to live on in a computer, though obviously that was changed quite a bit for the final screenplay. The final film is more, what if your game of Missile Command was real? You know, we used to play some pretty high stakes games of Missile Command back in the day. A lot was on the line. We used to play for pink slips, though because I was 8 at the time, I lost 2 BMX bikes.
They're gonna come get me. I'm really screwed.
Martin Brest was originally hired to direct a film that was much darker in tone. Brest disagreed with producers and was fired after a couple of weeks. He'd be replaced by John Badham, who already helmed the helicopter thriller Blue Thunder, which will eventually be released within weeks of WarGames. As on Blue Thunder, Badham took on a script that had started much darker and lightened it significantly, softening the script and the characters. Badham also got his young cast, already quite on edge, to loosen up in their performances. WarGames has a serious subject. I mean, it's not an easy thing to make the potential end of everything to be a chuckle-a-minute laugh-right gag fest. There is the feeling that there's a much more serious film here toned down during filming. Some scenes feel much darker in tone, and then there's a musical score that plays up the whimsical aspect so as to keep things airy. Otherwise, even without the actual end of the world, WarGames could come close to being quite funereal in places. Or in other words, a bummer. Hence, we tone down the threat slightly with idiot grown-ups who are just useless enough to keep things humming along.
Got a red light, sir.
It's 1983 and home computers are making their way into more homes, and kids are happily putting large numbers of coins into arcade machines. WarGames was not the first film about people interested in games using a computer and artificial intelligence running amok, but out of the many films in the 80s like this, WarGames was one of the few major successes.
They change the password every couple of weeks, but I know where they write it down.
The word hacking is not mentioned, but that is what David does at several points, where he engages in things like social engineering to work out Falcon's secret password. While David does wear a hoodie, he doesn't wear his in a darkened bedroom while using a voice changer with the oh-so-edgy handle of Death Ladle 627.
What's back door?
Well, whenever I design a system, I always put in a simple password that only I know about.
At the start of the film, David is pretty unscrupulous, where he's got no problem with the ethics of changing his grades, ripping off companies, or entering secure computer systems.
You can go to jail for that.
Only if you're over 18.
Ethics, or what's right and what's wrong, sure has evolved from a time when putting 13 items in the 12 items or less express checkout was considered a terrible social faux pas that would end up with you being run out of town. David's curiosity and hacking skills lead him to believe that things like security and legality don't apply to him, which leads to him almost starting World War III. By the time he realizes what he's done, it is almost too late. Now, I felt pretty much the same that one time that I grew a goatee. Never again.
What you see on these screens up here is a fantasy, a computer-enhanced hallucination.
WarGames is possibly the film that introduced film audiences to a number of common computer concepts. In that regard, it's definitely ahead of its time, and it's a film that sits high up on Stam Fine's list of AI will destroy everything but let's miss the point anyway movies, along with 2001: A Space Odyssey, Electric Dreams, and The User's Guide to Windows Millennium Edition.
General, you are listening to a machine. Do the world a favor and don't act like one.
The computers in this movie have incredibly chunky keystrokes, enough to give a mechanical keyboard enthusiast an ASMR eargasm. If your most recent memory of a floppy disk was a 3¼ inch floppy, the giant 8-inch floppy used by David does make him look like a toddler. The producers wanted to have the home computing hardware to not be too ridiculous for a teenager to have scrounged.
After very careful consideration, sir, I've come to the conclusion that your new defense system sucks.
It's 1983, so the threat of nuclear war ensured that a lot of kids of the era went through that phase of thinking that every loud noise was it. WarGames, even after a lightening of the mood, does tend to play on those fears. Still, didn't seem to hurt its chances as a date movie. WarGames was released in the summer of 1983 and would go on to multiply its $12 million budget to a worldwide box office haul of around 10 times that. As the 5th highest grossing film in North America for the year, that's a lot of whoppers. A direct-to-DVD sequel, or retread, was released in 2008, and we'll treat it in much the same way that we treat a rental car. We'll say nothing and hope that nobody notices the damage.
I don't have to take that, you pig-eyed sack of shit. No, I was hoping for something a little better than that from you, sir, a man of your education.
WarGames was an engaging thriller, trying to keep a delicate balance between the drama and the fun, one that also managed to say something about the futility of mutually assured destruction, and was yet another warning about AI that will be completely ignored. But it is also a film that audiences for generations have absolutely loved. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.